Have you ever wondered what happened when 5 famous women basketball players tried to criticize the sport's newest star? Well, this story is going to blow your mind. Let's start with Diana Taurasi. Now, if you know anything about women's basketball, you know she's basically considered the GOAT, the greatest of all time. And for good reason. She's won everything you can think of: 3 college championships, 3 WNBA titles, and she's scored more points than anyone else in WNBA history. She's the kind of player young girls put posters of on their walls. But something really interesting happened. You see, there's this new player, Caitlin Clark, who's been making headlines everywhere. Everyone's calling her the future of women's basketball. And get this, Clark actually looked up to Taurasi and always showed her respect. But then, Taurasi and 4 other big-name players said some things about Clark that nobody saw coming.
She was probably one of the first women's basketball players I really grew up idolizing and really knowing. Obviously her, Sue, Maya. So I would say that's kind of my first memory. It's just about the WNBA in general. It's she was one of the first that I really knew about.
You know what's really cool about Caitlin Clark? Even when she became super famous, she never forgot about the amazing players who came before her. She always showed them respect, even though many basketball fans only seemed to care about Clark and kind of ignored other talented players. But here's where things get interesting. While Clark was doing things nobody had ever seen before in women's sports, Diana Taurasi's reaction was pretty surprising.
Reality is coming. There's levels to this thing, and that's just life. We all went through it, and you see it on the NBA side, and you're going to see it on this side, where you look superhuman playing against 18-year-olds, but you're going to come with some grown women that have been playing professional basketball for a long time.
Diana Taurasi is no stranger to giving newcomers a brutal welcome to the league. In a jaw-dropping 4-hour live stream with Sue Bird, Taurasi didn't hold back. She openly admitted that when she faces rookies, her goal is to effing kill them. It's not just about beating them on the scoreboard. It's a full-on mental and physical beatdown that starts before the first whistle. Whether it's throwing shade like, "Oh, you had such a great senior year? Well, I'm about to school you right now," or simply dominating them on the court, Taurasi has made it her mission to humble the next generation. Now, you'd think that after 2 decades of being the league's face, she'd be a little protective of her legacy, maybe even a bit smug. But when Caitlin Clark hit the scene, this wasn't your usual tough love scenario. Taurasi's attitude wasn't about mentoring or passing the torch. It was pure hostility. The way she treated Clark went far beyond a veteran testing a rookie. It felt personal, and everyone noticed.
I'm taking Paige. Next question.
So you've hit the #1 pick this year. You would take Paige over Caitlin?
Absolutely.
Without offering any real analysis or justification, Taurasi seemed determined to undermine Caitlin Clark's historic college run. At first, some speculated she was simply rooting for Paige Buchers, a fellow UConn alum who shares a connection with Taurasi. But soon enough, it became clear. These relentless jabs weren't about loyalty or encouragement. They were something else entirely. When Caitlin Clark was controversially left off Team USA, Taurasi's true motives started to show. It wasn't just about the love of the game or defending the UConn legacy. It felt like she was fighting to stay relevant, demanding the spotlight she believed was rightfully hers. The attacks on Clark weren't subtle. They were loud, brash, and calculated, revealing a side of Taurasi that stunned fans and critics alike.
You were young yourself, and tell me if I'm wrong. Weren't you named to the roster as soon as you graduated, right? You were young.
Yeah, after I won 3 national championships in a row, I was named.
It became painfully obvious that, after being hailed as the WNBA's savior and achieving milestone after milestone, Diana Taurasi was starting to look like the veteran struggling to let go of the spotlight. Despite the image she might want to portray, jealousy seemed to be creeping in as the new generation, particularly Caitlin Clark, was capturing attention in ways Taurasi could only have imagined. And when you put the numbers side by side, the story tells itself. Diana was a 15-point scorer in college, while Clark was dropping 30 points per game and smashing collegiate scoring records left and right. It was clear where the world's focus was shifting. Diana's one-sided feud with Clark went quiet as the new season kicked off, but the whispers never faded. The tension lingered, and the fans didn't forget a word of what had been said. All eyes were locked on one date, June 30th, when the Indiana Fever would face the Phoenix Mercury. Everyone knew that game would be more than just another matchup. It was a showdown fueled by months of drama and rivalry, with a score to be settled.
From the NBA to the WNBA, Diana Taurasi, one of the best hoopers in basketball history. You can argue it with your mama. There is no debating her on-court impact. There was plenty debate over her off-court comments in April about Iowa star Caitlin Clark that had them both in the headlines and seemingly in the crosshairs of the old guard fans and the new wave masses. The GOAT and the Rook will square off for the first time this afternoon.
In a packed arena with over 17,000 fans defying weather advisories that urged everyone to stay indoors, tickets for this game were going for an eye-popping $2,000 each. Nothing was going to stop fans from witnessing what promised to be the hottest showdown in basketball that day. And the buzz wasn't just about the game, it was about the drama unfolding on the court. Diana Taurasi and Brittany Griner, arguably the most polarizing duo in the league, came out swinging. They were in total control, building up a lead that stretched to 15 points. It looked like they were going to put on a clinic, but then, in a split-second miscalculation, they made a colossal error. They allowed number 22 to find her rhythm, and from that moment on, the energy shifted, leaving everyone on the edge of their seats. As Caitlin Clark started catching fire, something became crystal clear. Diana Taurasi, after all her tough talk, had no interest in going head-to-head with Clark. Instead of stepping up to the challenge, she left her teammates hanging, forced to fend off Clark's relentless scoring spree on their own. It was a shocking move from a player known for her competitive fire, and it didn't go unnoticed. The crowd, expecting a clash of titans, saw a veteran back away just when things were heating up. For months, Diana Taurasi had been throwing shade at Caitlin Clark, but when it came time to back up her words, she left her teammates to do the dirty work. It was a move that felt anything but GOAT-like. Could you even imagine Michael Jordan shying away from a challenge like that? Despite having a comfortable lead in the second half, the Mercury crumbled under the pressure, thanks to a blistering 15-point, 12-assist performance from Clark. Taurasi, meanwhile, went ice cold, shooting a dismal 5 for 14 from the field, and as the final buzzer sounded, fans didn't hold back, making sure Taurasi knew exactly what kind of statement Caitlin Clark had just delivered. But the humiliation didn't stop there. Clark and the Fever didn't just win that game. They went on to beat the Mercury 2 more times in their next matchups. Clark's jaw-dropping performances, 20 points, 13 assists, and 6 rebounds in one game, followed by a 29-point, 10-assist, and 5-rebound outing, weren't just wins, they were statements. She took a team that had been the league's laughingstock a year ago and led them to a clean sweep over the player many consider the greatest of all time. To make matters worse for Taurasi, Clark's Fever ended the season with a better record than the Mercury, sparking whispers that Taurasi's time might be up. If retirement is truly on the horizon, it looks like Taurasi will leave the game without ever conquering the rising star who now stands in her shadow. But Caitlin Clark's triumph didn't end with Taurasi. She had another point to prove, and it came at the expense of Minnesota Lynx coach Cheryl Reeve. Reeve, who coached Clark's hometown team and lived just a stone's throw from Clark's childhood home, also happened to be the head coach of the Women's USA team, the same team that controversially cut Clark from the roster. Publicly, the ever-composed Clark played it cool, saying there were no hard feelings. But behind the scenes, whispers from her coach suggested Clark had some choice words about that snub.
It's all around the league. But as a coach of the home team, there's going to be a lot of people cheering for that other side.
I'll get 2 shits.
How about 1?
Not even 1 shit.
This was yet another game Caitlin Clark was taking personally, and it showed. But by the end of the third quarter, things looked bleak. The Lynx had dominated, holding Clark to a frustrating 3 for 9 shooting and forcing 4 turnovers in a rough first half. The third quarter didn't fare much better. Clark went 0 for 5 with 2 more turnovers, and the Lynx's second-best defense in the league was locking her down. They looked less like a WNBA team and more like a pack of hungry Timberwolves, ready to finish the job. With a 7-point deficit looming at the start of the fourth, it seemed like Clark was headed for a rare and humbling defeat. But just when it looked like the game was slipping away, a shift began to take place, a spark that hinted this wasn't over yet.
Plantar fasciitis, but her team is beating Indiana, and that's...
Caitlin Clark ignited a fourth-quarter rally that turned the Target Center into her personal playground. As she led the charge, the 1-seed Lynx watched in disbelief as Clark hyped up the crowd and locked eyes with coach Cheryl Reeve, daring her to find an answer. The atmosphere was electric, the most packed Target Center had been since the Western Conference Finals. And even on an off night by Clark's standards, she found ways to make a difference. Her shot might not have been falling, but she did all the little things that fueled a shocking upset, from crucial passes to key defensive stops. The Lynx, favorites to win, were left stunned. Reeve, unable to counter Clark's relentless effort, could do nothing but give a nod of respect.
That people come to see, right? So when the Wolves sell tickets, there are certain games that they know people are going to come watch certain players. And Caitlin Clark and some of the other rookies give us that. Obviously, Caitlin being the headliner.
Cheryl Reeve might have her reservations about Caitlin Clark's rising star power, but there's no denying she has a deep understanding of the game. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for ESPN's Molly Qerim, who has become notorious for her off-base comments over the years. Sitting at the center of the First Take debate table, she's managed to draw ridicule from nearly everyone who's watched the show for more than 15 minutes. And it's not about gender. Far from it. It's about credibility. When it comes to offering any meaningful basketball analysis, it's painfully obvious that insight isn't the reason she's in that seat. Her comments often leave viewers scratching their heads, wondering how someone with so little grasp of the game has managed to stay in the spotlight for so long.
You can't sit out. You can't get around our system.
How do you know it's that deep? Maybe they just didn't like the offer.
You can't get around. Well, that's your opinion. This one is mine. You can't get around our system.
Calls to fire Molly or cancel Molly have been echoing for what feels like forever, gaining traction with every questionable comment she makes. Despite the frequent interruptions and often shallow takes, quite a feat considering the rest of ESPN's lineup, Molly Qerim has somehow managed to coast along, occupying airtime for the better part of a decade. But now, with Caitlin Clark mania reaching a fever pitch, the backlash against Molly is fiercer than ever. Her latest misstep? Downplaying Clark's achievements while seemingly propping up others in an awkward attempt to shift the spotlight. Fans aren't buying it, and the wave of criticism has only grown stronger. It's as if the more Caitlin shines, the more Molly's credibility dims, leaving many wondering why she's still holding a place at the table.
All I gotta say is she's lucky this UConn team isn't healthy. And that's a true statement.
That's wrong, Molly.
Monica?
That's wrong, Molly. Molly,
like
it's
five
excuses.
top players,
It's
am I
excuses,
right?
Molly.
If Paige Beckerson basically missed 2 seasons, I don't know if we'd be talking about Caitlin Clark the way we are now. And that's facts.
And to that point, it was the two of them.
I said that the other day.
I was out of the country.
I'm just saying, don't bring up now that they completed roster.
As a Minnesota native, I've been saying Paige Buchers is going to be the greatest women's basketball player for the past 6 years. But just because I believe in Paige's potential doesn't mean I'm about to dismiss Caitlin Clark, who's out here draining threes from the logo like it's nothing. Let's be real. Forget everyone else for a second. Paige Buchers and Caitlin Clark are likely to be 2 of the best players in the world for years to come. If you're tearing one down to lift the other, you're not just missing the point. You're holding back the growth of the entire women's game. The rivalry between them is what makes the sport exciting, but it's the respect and recognition for both that will elevate the WNBA to new heights. Let's celebrate their greatness, not pit them against each other to the detriment of the game we all love. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more to come, and the next part of this video will be uploaded soon. Don't miss out. Stay tuned.